I'm Carrie Shirts, the Backyard Professor. The argument that the Book of Mormon has no archaeological or historical proof in favor of it, that's what I'm talking about. In the 1991 book, Rediscovering the Book of Mormon, Insights You May Have Missed Before, edited by Sorensen and Melvin J. Thorne, William Hamblin has a really remarkable chapter on warfare in the Book of Mormon. In Joseph Smith's day, warfare had adopted the gunpowder method. Technology had become modern. And so if he was going to write about warfare from his day's perspective, inventing the Book of Mormon, he probably would have messed up describing ancient warfare as opposed to some of the tactics and strategies of modern warfare. Hamblin describes some of that. On page 242, 243, 244, so on, Hamblin says, in its emphasis on warfare, the Book of Mormon accurately reflects the grim reality of early history. And many features of pre-modern warfare were still present in Joseph Smith's day, of course. However, there were vital differences. A basic change in the nature of war occurred when gunpowder weapons became effective beginning in the 14th century. Joseph Smith published the Book of Mormon after the rise of gunpowder weapons and the war tactics that Napoleon had devised. Yet the Book of Mormon reflects pre-gunpowder warfare tactics and strategies and military operations, as he shows. Ancient warfare was limited by agriculture. Men were needed to plant and harvest, yet the same men were also needed to serve as soldiers in the army. Yet mass armies could only be maintained for a few months of the year, not year-round like happened in Napoleon's day. They were not equipped to operate in all of the operations in the weather also. Only certain months of the year permitted them to move, camp, and fight in the field. The Book of Mormon parallels ancient warfare in the areas of ecology and agriculture. It talks about battles that are limited by farming and harvests and war operations affected by weather. That's an ancient aspect. The weapons and military technology is another factor. Despite vast differences in details, all pre-modern soldiers fought with roughly similar weapons. Face-to-face, personal combat was standard. So they had swords and other handheld weapons. These were key, and armor was also common. Missiles like arrows, javelins, and spears were all propelled by muscle power in some way. But with the rise of the long-range gunpowder weapons, guns replaced swords, spears, and arrows, and armor too was discarded. Thus, weapons, tactics, and military operations in the Book of Mormon fit the ancient pattern. I have found weapons and armor in the Book of Mormon to be consistent with patterns of the ancient Near East and Mesoamerica. Nothing in the Nephite records suggests that Joseph Smith could have invented these war stories with their tactics based on how fighting was done in his day. Instead, warfare in the Book of Mormon sounds like that of the Mesoamericans before the Spaniard conquest. All of the coats of arms, helmets, the battle chariots, the cavalry, and the siege engines, elements prominent in Bible lands, they are absent in both the Book of Mormon and Mesoamerica. The Book of Mormon leaves out those features of armament frequently mentioned in the biblical and classical sources that were available to Joseph Smith. In logistics, in order for armies to compete, the ancient societies had to have basic resources. As the story of Moroni and Pahoran illustrate, the costs of war put terrible social and economic pressure on the Nephite society. This is in Alma's chapter 58 through 61. Plundering was used to supply many ancient armies, and the Book of Mormon mentions that often. Warriors were generally organized into kinship or community units. The soldiers served under leaders who fought in battle and whom they knew personally. Units tended to be organized by tens, hundreds, and thousands, a fact reflected throughout the Book of Mormon. The Book of Mormon armies followed the ancient pattern of armies organized along kinship, tribal, and community lines, and with its hereditary leadership. The following features in the book also parallel ancient logistics. loyalty based on community, social, and economic problems affecting warfare, problems of supply, the importance of plunder, and the lack of use of animals for movement and supply. Preparations for battle anciently were complex. Soldiers had to be trained, equipped, and organized into units for marching and fighting. Then they were mobilized at central points to begin their operations. The leaders of these armies were commonly using distinctive banners to identify themselves, much as Moroni used his title of liberty. When war threatened, getting troops and supplies to key spots could involve extensive marching and maneuvering. And this is mentioned frequently in the Book of Mormon. In fact, it's some of the most boring parts of the Book of Mormon, but it's definitely the ancient technique. They are describing a real war-like situation from an ancient perspective, in other words. Not all conflict involved formal set battles. Much of it was closer to what in modern terms we would call guerrilla warfare. This style of the fighting is clearly described in the Book of Mormon, especially in the account of the Gadianton robbers, of course. Frequently, a council of officers and veterans got together and recommended different suggestions and strategies and ideas. This is what Moroni does to prepare for battle in Alma 52:19. Information from spies was crucial to forming battle plans. Knowledge of the enemy sometimes depended solely upon reports from spies, exactly as the Book of Mormon depicts it. Battles often begin with an exchange of missiles, stones, arrows, spears, to wound and demoralize the enemy, and only after that do they get into hand-to-hand combat. This is how the Book of Mormon describes their warfare. Personal oaths, which strike us moderns as extremely odd, this is how battles were fought. The Book of Mormon's emphasis on oaths of loyalty from troops and oaths of surrender from prisoners shows ancient concepts at work. Oaths were more powerful than our written contracts today. Treatment of robbers in the Book of Mormon reflects its ancient usage, as well as the taking of prisoners and the exchanging of prisoners, because the extra mouths to feed and the extra bodies to protect put a strain on the armies. From the Lamanites' point of view, they would simply kill the prisoners, but the Nephites were willing to exchange those prisoners. Again, a perfect ancient warfare tactic. Nearly all ancient war was connected with religion and was carried out with complex ritual religious meaning. This is how the Book of Mormon also depicts it. The ideology of the holy war is how the Book of Mormon understands war. The Book of Mormon unintentionally reveals the close ties between war and religion. Activities such as consulting prophets before battle are mentioned in the Book of Mormon. Likewise, a strict purity code for warriors can be seen in the story of Helaman and the young 2,000 stripling warriors. An example of the ritual destruction of apostate cities appears in the Book of Mormon in Alma 16. The ideology of holy war among the Nephites parallels that of the ancient Israelites in some respects. The Book of Mormon manifests clear parallels to ancient patterns of military behavior. There were also the martial implications of shifting populations, the exchange of written or oral challenges between leaders, and the centrality of war to the elite class of society, to name a few more areas. In so many ways, the Book of Mormon uniquely reflects its dual heritage of the ancient Near East and Mesoamerica. Warfare, the discovery of how ancient warfare was carried out, is yet another interesting piece of information that shows the argument that the Book of Mormon has no archaeological proof in its favor. That argument is simply false.